It was pouring outside the Hilton in Las Vegas. 1976. Elvis had just stepped out when he stopped, eyes fixed on a man in uniform, soaked through, standing alone in the rain. If stories like this remind you why kindness matters, stick around, because what happened next is something the crowd never forgot. The rain on the Las Vegas Strip wasn't a drizzle, it was a drumbeat, pounding against neon-lit puddles that splashed gold, pink, and electric blue. The marquee outside the Hilton roared, "Elvis lived tonight," letters glowing like a beacon against the storm. Hundreds of fans huddled under umbrellas, the air thick with the smell of wet asphalt and cheap cologne. You could hear muffled excitement from inside the showroom, the last chords of "Can't Help Falling in Love" still humming in the floorboards, but away from the main doors. Just beyond the reach of the awning, one man stood completely still, no umbrella, no ticket. A faded green military jacket clung to him, rainwater tracing dark lines down the sleeves. The faint shine of medals caught stray light from passing taxis. His boots sat in a shallow pool, water rippling with each drop. Backstage, Elvis was riding the adrenaline high that came after a strong set. According to crew members, he'd been laughing with his band, shaking hands with guests, still in the white jumpsuit that shimmered under the dressing room lights. Then he paused, mid-laughed, eyes drawn to something beyond the glass of the side door from his vantage point. The figure in the rain looked carved into place, motionless, soaked, alone, witnesses. Say Elvis's expression changed in an instant. The grin softened. He handed his microphone to a stagehand, murmured something no one caught, and reached for his black overcoat. No fuss, no announcement, just action. Security wasn't ready for it. One guard called, "Boss, where you going?" But Elvis didn't answer. The sound of his boots on the tile echoed down the hall. Outside, the storm swallowed the noise of the Strip. The glass doors swung open, and there he was, stepping straight into the downpour. Camera flashes from a few lingering fans sparked in the wet night. Rain plastered his hair to his forehead. He walked directly toward the man in the jacket. By this point, word was spreading through the small post-show crowd outside. Heads turned, whispers rippled. Some fans leaned out from under the Hilton awning, watching as the king of rock and roll closed the space between him and a stranger. When Elvis finally stopped, he stood only a few feet away. He didn't speak right away, just looked. Really looked at the man's face, the rain streaking across it like tears. And that's where the night took its first turn. Because instead of heading back inside to warmth and champagne, Elvis stayed there in the storm, as if the show wasn't over yet. Cliffhanger. Why would Elvis leave his own post-show celebration in the middle of a storm? Close-up, scuffed leather, boots, water pooling around the soles. The veteran hasn't moved in minutes. Rain beads on the brim of the cap tucked beneath his arm. His hair, darkened by water, sticks to his forehead. His jacket, standard army green, is heavy with rain. Shoulders slouched as if weighed down by more than weather. Some say he'd been there since before the show began, standing still, as streams of tourists rushed past. No sign, no outstretched hand, just quiet, unshakable presence. The crowd's chatter fades when Elvis steps into the rain. Gasps ripple through the line of fans pressed under the awning. A few raise cameras. Flashes strobe against the wet night. Elvis stops in front of the man. Rain drips from his own collar, soaking the lapels of his coat. His voice is calm, pitched low enough that only those close can hear. "Sir," he says, "what's your name?" The man straightens slightly, chest out in a reflex that never leaves soldiers. James Carter, he replies. Us Army. Elvis. Nods, eyes narrowing with focus. Just back, yes sir, couple weeks ago. His tone carries exhaustion, but also pride. According to witnesses, Elvis studies him for a beat, long enough that the tension pulls everyone in. The rain patters, harder against the pavement, blurring the strip's neon into smeared colors. You didn't come in? Elvis asks. James shakes his head. Couldn't afford it. Figured I'd at least hear a little from outside. He glances toward the Hilton doors. Sound carries. That admission hits heavier than the storm. Elvis's jaw shifts, not in pity, but in decision. Without looking at security or the onlookers, he steps closer, placing a hand on James's damp sleeve. The silence is thick now, broken only by distant casino bells and the steady drum of rain. Come with me, Elvis. Says simply. James hesitates, glancing down at his wet boots, then toward the cluster of fans staring at them. I'm not. You're with me, Elvis interrupts. Tone final dot, and just like that, the open loop tightens. The king turns, expecting James to follow. The veteran does. Security moves in, unsure if they should clear a path or stop the stranger. Elvis solves it with a quick glance over his shoulder. He's all right. The crowd shifts aside, murmuring, craning necks to watch as the two men head toward the Hilton doors. Behind them, the rain keeps falling. A curtain closing on whatever scene just played out. The warmth of the lobby is only steps away, but no one in that crowd can guess why Elvis is bringing this man inside, or what he's about to do next. Cliffhanger. Where was Elvis taking him, and why? The Hilton's glass doors part with a hiss, letting in a rush of rain-chilled air and the faint scent of wet asphalt inside. Warmth hits like a blanket. Soft gold lighting glows off polished marble floors. The air is heavy with a mix of perfume, cigarette smoke, and the damp wool of coats just shrugged off. Conversations die mid-sentence as heads turn toward the entrance. Elvis walks in first, dark coat already dripping. Behind him, James Carter follows, uncertain, his army jacket leaving a trail of water across the gleaming floor. Security takes a step forward, but Elvis waves them off with a single flick of his fingers. He's with me, he says, voice carrying, just enough for the curious lobby to hear. It's not a boast, it's a statement of fact. James glances around, clearly out of place in this world of sequined dresses, crisp suits, and cocktail glasses balanced on silver trays. Elvis shrugs off his coat and, without a second thought, drapes it over James's shoulders. The fabric is warm, smelling faintly of cologne and stage lights. They cross the lobby, shoes clicking against the tile. Elvis heads toward a pair of gold-paneled elevator doors. Inside, soft jazz plays over hidden speakers. James hesitates before stepping in, as if unsure if this ride is meant for him. Elvis grins, a quick flash of teeth. Come on, brother. He presses the penthouse button. The doors close, sealing them in a small cocoon of quiet. Elvis leans casually against the wall, studying James the way a man studies a song lyric he's trying to understand. Where you from? Elvis asks. Mississippi, James replies. Little town outside Jackson. Elvis nods slowly. Got family waiting on you. James's voice softens. Wife, 2 kids. Haven't seen them in over a year. The elevator hums upward. Outside the narrow window, rain streaks across the glow of the strip. According to those who later heard the story, James spoke about the deployment the months of heat, dust, and distance. His voice cracked once, just enough for Elvis to notice. Elvis doesn't push. He just listens, nodding, his eyes locked on the man's face. Halfway up, James finally asks, "Where are we going?" Elvis's answer is simple. "Thought you could use a better seat tonight." James lets out a short, incredulous laugh, but the question lingers in his eyes. What does that mean, exactly? The elevator slows, a soft chime. The doors slide open. Beyond them, a burst of warm light, and the faint hum of conversation spill in. 100 eyes turn toward the opening elevator, faces in sequins, musicians with instruments still in hand. James freezes in the doorway. Mid-roll, hook 1. When those elevator doors opened, James had no idea 100 strangers would be waiting. Just for him. Cliffhanger. What did Elvis plan upstairs? The first thing James notices is the smell, faint leather, stage makeup, and the lingering warmth of hot lights cooling down. The penthouse suite isn't the smoke-filled casino floor he expected. It's a private world. Plush carpets, heavy curtains muffling the storm outside, and a grand piano gleaming under soft lamplight. Scattered around the room are members of Elvis's band, still in their performance clothes, gold-stitched jackets, silk shirts open at the collar, instruments resting in their laps. Elvis steps inside like he owns the air itself, but his first move is toward the band. "This here's James," he says. "He served so we could be here tonight." Every head turns. There's a murmur of respect. One of the guitarists nods at James, fingers already finding strings. James stands awkwardly, coat still on his shoulders, the scent of Elvis's cologne mixing with his own rain-soaked jacket. He tries to say something, but Elvis just raises a hand, motioning him toward a seat directly in front of the band. "You ever get a private show?" Elvis asks, a half-smile tugging at his mouth. James shakes his head slowly. "Can't say I have." "Well," Elvis says, "tonight you do." Without further cue, the band shifts. Bass strings hum, soft and low. The pianist lays down the first tender notes of "Can't Help Falling in Love." The room stills, every sound funneling toward that melody. Elvis begins to sing, not to the room, not to the band, but directly to James. His voice is softer than it was on stage, intimate, almost conversational. The lyrics float like warm air, wrapping around a veteran in a way applause never could. James's shoulders tense, then shake. His hands grip the coat tighter, knuckles whitening. Rainwater still clings to his hair, but now his eyes glisten, for a different reason. Witnesses would later recall the way Elvis kept his gaze locked on James, as if making sure every word landed exactly where it needed to. The final note fades into silence. No one claps. The moment feels too sacred for that. Elvis steps forward, reaches into his pocket, and pulls out a silk scarf, white with a faint sheen that catches the lamplight. He drapes it over James's shoulders, the fabric still warm from the stage. "Earlier that night, you'll always have a seat with me," Elvis says quietly. The band members exchange glances. They've seen Elvis give away scarves before to screaming fans in packed arenas, but not like this. Not in silence. Not with the weight of meaning that fills the room now. James opens his mouth, but no words come. He simply nods, scarf in place, coat still draped, as if holding on to proof that this night is real. Mid-roll hook 2, but Elvis wasn't done. What he did the next morning would change James's life. Cliffhanger. Why would Elvis keep in touch after this night. The rain had stopped, but the strip still smelled like a damp asphalt, faint gasoline, and the cold edge of desert air. James woke to a softness he hadn't felt in months. A real bed, crisp sheets, the faint hum of the hotel's air conditioning. For a few seconds, he didn't know where he was. Then the night before came rushing back, the walk through the rain, the music, Elvis's voice in that quiet room. There's a knock at the door. Not a pounding, just a polite tap. James swings his legs over the side of the bed, bare feet sinking into thick carpet. He opens the door to find a hotel staff member holding a cream-colored envelope. "This is for you, sir," the man says, handing it over with a small smile before disappearing down the hall. James sits at the edge of the bed, fingers brushing over the embossed Hilton letterhead. Inside, there's a front-row ticket for every remaining night of Elvis's Vegas run. The dates are neatly printed. Starting that evening, tucked behind the ticket is a handwritten note on thick cream stationery. "For your service, for your spirit." EP. James exhales slowly, reading it again just to make sure it's real. Then something else falls from the envelope, a small brass key with a paper tag. The handwriting is the same. Greyhound Station. Locker 214. Curiosity outweighs hesitation. By mid-morning, James is standing in the muted chaos of the bus station. The smell here is different. Diesel fumes, old coffee, and worn leather from countless suitcases. Locker 214 is halfway down a narrow row. The key fits perfectly. Inside, resting on a folded towel, is a brand new acoustic guitar. A military green strap is already attached, and the case pocket holds a small card. Music brings us home. James runs his fingers across the polished wood, the strings still bright and untouched. His throat tightens. This isn't just a gift. It's an invitation. Back at the Hilton, word is already spreading. Staff members whisper about the guy Elvis brought in from the rain. Fans in the lobby hear pieces of the story from bellhops and cocktail servers. By the time James returns, a few people are waiting to shake his hand. That night, he takes his new front row seat. When Elvis spots him, he gives a small nod from the stage, a nod only James understands. Between songs, Elvis tosses him a grin, and for a moment, it feels like the crowd has disappeared. But this isn't the end of the story. The guitar, the note, the tickets, they're just the beginning of what that night would mean for James and his family. Cliffhanger, what would this gift mean for James's future? In a small Mississippi living room, years later, the white silk scarf still hangs framed on the wall, its edges slightly yellowed with time. When James returned home after Vegas, the first thing he did was gather his family in the living room. The new guitar sat on his lap, the military green strap slung over his shoulder. His kids, a boy of 9, a girl just 6, sat cross-legged on the carpet, eyes fixed on their father as he strummed a few tentative chords. This, James told them, came from Elvis Presley himself. From that day forward, the guitar wasn't just an instrument, it became part of their evenings. Sometimes James played old gospel tunes, sometimes simple country ballads. The scarf stayed on the wall, the note from Elvis in a drawer where it could be reached at any time. Neighbors noticed the change. James, who once spoke little about his time overseas, now talked about music, kindness, and the night the rain didn't matter. That night gave me back a piece of myself, he would tell anyone who asked. The story traveled further than James expected. A local paper ran a short feature, accompanied by a photo of James holding the guitar, scarf visible in the background. From there, fan clubs picked it up, and before long, Elvis fans in other towns began a small tradition, buying tickets for veterans at concerts. Just to pass the kindness forward, years rolled on. James's children grew. The guitar strings were replaced more than once, but the strap never changed. It still carried the faint scent of leather and stage smoke. Then came the day when the living room fell quiet. James passed away peacefully at home, the guitar leaning against the wall beside his chair. At his funeral, it sat at the front of the church, the silk scarf tied gently around the headstock, the note placed in the open case for everyone to see. People who never met Elvis still felt the weight of the story. They paused at the display, some reaching out to touch the edge of the scarf, as if it carried a piece of both men's spirits. In the days after, one of James's old friends said, No, he never really talked about the war, but he never stopped talking about that night. The guitar stayed in the family. His daughter now keeps it in her home, framed photo of Elvis and her father beside it. And when her children ask about the man in the rain, she tells them the same thing every time. That night wasn't about music or fame. It was about seeing someone who needed kindness and stopping everything to give it. The night outside the Hilton became more than a memory. It sparked a quiet movement of generosity for veterans that still ripples through small towns and big cities alike. If this story moved you, share it with someone who believes kindness can stop the rain. What's the greatest act of kindness you've ever witnessed?